My channel usually deals with the darker matters of paranormal, horror, and crime, and I have dark subjects lined up for the future episodes indeed. But it's nearly the end of the year and the holiday season, and I thought maybe I could take a brief pause from them. So, for this week, I'm going back to stories about more endearing mythical creatures, Dokkaebi, Korean goblin. If you should ask what the heck Dokkaebi is, that means you missed my previous episode about them. Well, I'll leave the link to them where I explained what Dokkaebi is in details, but if I have to sum up, a Dokkaebi is a mythical creature from Korean folklore, something somewhat akin to a goblin or troll. They are not god or deity, no ghosts because they are not derived from human spirits. They are believed to occur naturally from various natural or man-made objects, from an age-old tree to a humble old broomstick. We live a very visual-centric time and want to know first and foremost what something looks like, but it's tricky to describe a Dokkaebi in a single coherent look. They can come in all sorts of shape and form, sometimes simple supernatural phenomena such as a loud noise, tremor, or ball of floating fire. Even when they take on a humanoid shape, they can resemble a child, woman, elderly, and everything in between. But if one is forced to pick one most representative image of Dokkaebi, it would be in a big burly man. Unusually tall, very hairy, and often smells akin to a beast. Some argue that image is based on the impression ancient Koreans had about the Middle Eastern merchants. Ancient Korea was a surprisingly globally trading nation, unlike later dynasties which was described as hermit nation. Character-wise, a man-child would be the best description of Dokkaebi. They are goofy, love to have fun. They are simple creatures that go by simple logic of give and take, often have magical powers to transform into different shapes, create objects, or perform superhuman tasks, but they are not very smart to the level of naivety and often lend themselves to be used by more sly humans. Their naughty pranks could sometimes end up harming people, but they are never really malicious. They just like to have fun without a care about consequence, that's all. And so, Dokkaebi remains one of the most beloved traditional mythical creatures in Korea, retold in various folk tales and children's fairy tales. Today, I'm going to read Dokkaebi stories in historic timeline, from year 500, 1000, 19th century to 1940s. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by host. Anthony. 삼국유사 is a 13th century collection of various historic events and legends from the previous dynasties, and is considered one of the most important documents in studying ancient history of Korea. But for today's subject matter, 삼국유사 is also considered the oldest written record about Dokkaebi. Dokkaebi appears as side characters in the tale of Bihyang-nang, a real-life character in Silla dynasty. During the short reign of Jinjiwang, the 25th king of Silla dynasty, between the year 576 to 579, there lived a famous beauty named Doha. The fame reached the royal ear, and the king called her in and asked her to become his lover. Problem was, Doha was already a married lady. "The rule of the world says a woman can't serve two husbands. Even a king can't ask me to break it," Doha said.
"Don't forget I'm the king. I could easily kill you for refusing my order,"
King threatened. "I would rather die an honorable woman." Doha was unswayed.
"So, what you are saying is you can accept me so long you don't have a husband?"
King said. I guess so," Doha said. Not long after the encounter, the king met a sudden death. And about 3 years later, Tohwa also lost her husband. 10 days after she became a widow, the spirit of the late king appeared in her bedroom, looking just like when he was alive.
You promised to accept me when you don't have your husband anymore, didn't you?
He said. Well, a promise was a promise. And the king's spirit stayed with Tohwa for 7 days and nights. And all the while, rainbow-colored cloud covered the roof of Tohwa's house, and sweet scent of flower floated around her bedroom. After the 7 days, the spirit finally left Tohwa, leaving her pregnant. 9 months later, a boy was born, and he was named Bihyang-nang. The story about the boy's mysterious, ghostly royal origin reached the royal palace, and he was given the job of a royal steward at the age of 15. But then one day, the king got a report that Bihyang-nang seemed to go out of the palace every night. King was worried if the young steward was up to something unsavory, and ordered his guards to spy on his nocturnal move. The report the king received was indeed fantastical. Bihyang-nang would fly over the high walls of the palace to the outside and all the way to the other side of the river. And there, he met up with a group of Dokkaebi and enjoyed a party with them until the first bell of the dawn. Then, Dokkaebis would scatter away and Bihyang-nang would fly back to his royal position. King promptly brought the young steward in. I hear you play with a group of Dokkaebi every night. Is that true? King asked. That is so, Your Majesty, Bihyang-nang admitted straightforwardly. If you are truly a friend to Dokkaebis, why don't you borrow their power to build a new bridge over the North Stream? King said. Bihyang-nang took up the royal order and had his Dokkaebis cut out stones and build the bridge, which took no more than a single night. The large stone bridge was fittingly named as the Ghost Bridge. The king was duly impressed and asked Bihyang-nang, Is there any individual among your Dokkaebis who is smart enough to help with the government matters? There's a Dokkaebi named Gildal. He should be of good use, Your Majesty, Bihyang-nang said. So Gildal became the first Dokkaebi who got a royal appointment. He proved himself to be very loyal, as well as possessing superhuman power. Once he was ordered to build a new gate to a royal temple, and he managed it in a day like it was nothing. King was so happy with his Dokkaebi that he even recommended one of his ministers to adopt Gildal as his son. But the story doesn't have a happy ending. For a free-spirited Dokkaebi, stuffy life in the palace was probably too much to bear in the end. Some later edition claims Gildal Dokkaebi assaulted his stepsister, but whatever the case, he disguised himself as a fox and ran away from the palace. Bihyang-nang raged over this betrayal, and he chased Gildal and made him pay the price of betrayal with his life. The story spread quickly, and all the Dokkaebis were now scared even just to hear the name of Bihyang-nang. People made a little ditty about Bihyang-nang, and it was believed to carry the power to scare Dokkaebi and ghosts away. In Hwaji Mountain in Busan is the Chung family tomb. It is said to be a particularly fortunate spot according to feng shui, and indeed Chung family produced a number of government ministers and successful descendants down the line. As to prove the point, there's an interesting story how the family tomb came about. In the early years of Korea dynasty at the turn of the first millennium, there was a governor of southern province named Ko. One day he was on an official journey around Busan, and when he reached Hwaji Mountain, he had a one good look overview and said,
"What a pity. It would have made such a wonderful plot, but..."
His assistant named Jung Ho-jang overheard it and thought it curious. Nevertheless, he kept his boss's word in mind because apparently his boss had a deep understanding of feng shui. A few years passed. Meanwhile, Koiko, the governor, was moved to a different region, and his assistant Jung Ho-jang lost his father. Jung Ho-jang still remembered his boss's word from few years back and decided to make the tomb of his father in Hwaji Mountain. But when he and his younger brother went to check on his father's tomb, they were shocked to find it all dug up down to the coffin. Who could have committed such a travesty? They decided to watch over the tomb that night to catch whoever did it. Time was passing midnight, and a group of Dokkaebis appeared from nowhere. They dug around and made a mess of the tomb, saying,
"Ha! How dare they burying a flimsy wooden box here? This land deserves a golden box, no less."
Brothers were outraged, but there was no way they could confront Dokkaebi face to face. The older of the brother contemplated if they could afford a golden coffin, but younger brother had a different idea.
"We can't let Dokkaebi have their way. I hear Dokkaebi are born out of certain objects. Let us find it out and get rid of these Dokkaebis from their source."
So, brothers moved their father's coffin, buried an empty wooden box, and waited. Indeed, when midnight came, Dokkaebis appeared again, dug up the tomb, and even broke the wooden box. While the mob was so busy and preoccupied with the vandalism, Jung Ho-jang sneaked up behind them and pinned the thread to one of their trousers. When the dawn broke, the Jung brothers traced back the thread, and it led them to an old tree by a rock across the valley. Angry brothers took their pickaxes and struck the rock. Fresh blood sprung up from the rock, and the clear sky growled with thunder. Brothers were scared, but carried on and managed to break down the rock. And then, there was nobody disturbing their father's tomb, nor they saw any trace of Dokkaebi again either. The plot of the tomb must have been indeed very lucky. The Jung family fortune turned around, and Jung Ho-jang became very wealthy. One day he seeked his old boss, Koiko, who by then became a government minister and resided in the capital city. The minister welcomed his old assistant, and Jung Ho-jang talked about how he'd been doing, including taking late father's tomb in Hwaji Mountain based on what the minister mentioned years back. Suddenly, the minister's face changed. He bursted out his rage and shouted to Jung Ho-jang to get out of his house right away. Kicked out, Jung Ho-jang couldn't understand what just happened. What of what he said could have made the minister so angry? But soon a servant came out and led Jung Ho-jang back to the minister. Minister seemed still stiff, but calmed down enough to ask,
"Wasn't there anything weird happening around your father's tomb?"
Jung Ho-jang talked about the Dokkaebis and how he and his brother managed to get rid of them. Smile appeared on the old minister's face.
"As you overheard, I indeed recognize the plot most fortunate. But a rock across the valley gave off such a harsh energy, and if anybody should take the plot for his tomb, the descendants were to turn out traitors to the nation. I was angry earlier because I feared you might indeed turn out as one. But then I noticed I didn't find any disturbed energy from your demeanor, and let you in again to ask the details. Now that you got rid of the unholy rock, I'm sure everything should be fine with the tomb and your family.
Indeed, 정호장 later became a successful government officer himself, and the good fortune continued down the family line. 정수동 was a poet in the early 19th century Joseon dynasty. He disregarded social conventions and authorities of his time, and his sharp satirical works and eccentric behaviors made him almost a legendary figure in his own lifetime. There are many mythical stories that are said to be related to the poet, and one of them involves Dokkaebi. There was an old holy tree at the entry to Cheongsu-dong's village in Pyongan province, as often was the case with many villages at the time. But this particular tree was rumored to be taken by a Dokkaebi. This naughty Dokkaebi would scare a passerby or even play a prank on villagers, but people couldn't really do anything much for the fear of Dokkaebi's power. And one night, Cheongsu-dong was on his way back from a friend's late night. And then a big burly guy blocked his way and said in a weird voice that sounded like echoing from a cave,
"Oi, Mr. Kim, lend me 100 coins?"
Cheongsu-dong was a well-known figure, and every villager knew he was Mr. Cheong, not Kim. But then he remembered Dokkaebis would address any human as Mr. Kim, the most common family name in Korea. Aha, so this guy should be a Dokkaebi. Cheongsu-dong happened to have money he borrowed from his rich friend, and fully expecting the guy to be a Dokkaebi, he handed 100 coins to the strange guy. After all, Dokkaebi would always pay back both for the good and bad. The following night, Cheongsu-dong was out in his yard to enjoy the moonlight. And then the strange guy suddenly appeared and paid back 100 coins he borrowed and disappeared again. Just as he expected, Dokkaebi didn't fail to pay back. But then he heard how naughty the Dokkaebi had been to other villagers. Borrowing money prank was apparently a favorite of the Dokkaebi, who would normally carry 100 coins on them. When his poor victim failed to land him 100 coins on the spot, Dokkaebi would harass the victim with all sorts of pranks. It was time to pay him back, Cheongsu-dong thought. Following day, he went out to the holy tree at the entry of the village and loudly grumbled.
Ah, this naughty Dokkaebi is not paying back the money he lent from me. What a punk!
Very that night, Dokkaebi appeared at Cheongsu-dong's place again and handed him 100 coins. Dokkaebi is not known for being smart, and this dim Dokkaebi forgot he had paid back already. This routine continued for days, and with the money, Cheongsu-dong threw parties for his neighbors and helped poor villagers. But then one night, the routine stopped. Dokkaebi didn't come to pay the money back. He must have realized what happened. Cheongsu-dong was worried a bit because Dokkaebi never fails to pay back, for good or bad. Right following day, it already started. Cheongsu-dong's dog was found on the roof of the house. The household and neighbors were baffled and found it ominous, but Cheongsu-dong alone bursted into laughter and said loudly,
Look, people, how smart my dog is. It went up the roof to watch better over the house. No thief would escape his eyes now.
His family and neighbors joined his laugh for Cheongsu-dong's carefree attitude. The following day, even weirder thing happened. The sky was blue and sunny, but Cheongsu-dong's house alone was flooded with a torrential shower. His family got all nerves for this inexplicable phenomenon, but Cheongsu-dong took out his fishing rod and nonchalantly set himself in the garden.
Ha ha ha! How thoughtful! Somebody knew I was dying to go for fishing and made a pond of my garden.
The Dokkaebi must have got all worked up for Cheongstong's carefree reaction, and the following day, he covered Cheongstong's farming land with the rocks and pebbles. Cheongstong's wife looked almost about to cry, but Cheongstong danced around with the laughs. "This year's harvest is all ruined. What are you so happy about?" wife said.
Don't you see, my dear? With all the rocks, our farmland would stay firm even in the storm. How thoughtful! I was rather worried if the naughty Dokkaebi wouldn't cover the field with dog shit.
Following day, on the farming field, the pebbles and rocks were all gone and instead was covered with dog shit. For once, Cheongstong fell on the spot and loudly cried out,
Naughty Dokkaebi ruined my farming field!
He gathered some young burly villagers and went to the holy tree.
I've been putting up with your naughty pranks so far, but you've crossed the line. If you don't leave the holy tree and our village right away, we will force you out,
Cheongstong shouted. But a sudden gust of wind almost made him take a step back, as to say, F you.
Ha! You think you are stronger than I? I'll show you my power then. I will now make the sun go away,
Cheongstong said, and dramatically lifted his arms towards the heaven and chanted some weird spell. And voila! The sun disappeared and the world got dark. Villagers were stunned, but of course, Cheongstong knew it was the day of solar eclipse already.
See? Such is my power. Get away from this village now before I crush you by force.
Cheongstong aggressively growled. And indeed, nobody saw or suffered Dokkaebi's pranks in the village anymore since that day. All the while, Cheongstong's farming field was enriched with the manure of dog shit and had a plentiful harvest like never before. My dad is from a big family. He's the seventh of 8 children and was born in those turbulent years between Korean independence and Korean War. Anyway, this story from his babyhood is talked and discussed so much among the family members that it has become a sort of family myth. One day, my grandpa was ill. With an unusually high fever that persisted over 2 days, he could hardly get up. But the life had to go on for the rest of the family. My older uncles and aunts went to school, and my grandma had to go out to the market with a baby dad on her back, leaving bedridden grandpa all alone home. But then,
Hello! Hello!
someone kept calling from the outside. Grandpa couldn't even get off the bed and barely yelled with a cracking voice,
Who is this? I'm too ill to get up. Oh, excuse me,
said the visitor, followed by heavy stomping footsteps. Then this strange guy opened up the door to Grandpa's room.
You shall be my companion of the day,
said he, and with no further question, hauled ill Grandpa over his shoulder. Grandpa was so ill and blurry with fever, he couldn't even say anything, let alone resist. And the strange man ran so fast that Grandpa couldn't make out the passing views around, but he just thought it was because of his delirium. Where the guy took Grandpa to was a pub. Now, Grandpa lived all his life in that small village. Naturally, he knew his own and all the neighboring villages and all the shops and pubs there like the back of his hand. But that pub where the strange guy took him to, Grandpa could not recognize. Nevertheless, Grandpa loved drinking, just as my dad and myself now do, and didn't say no to many glasses of rice wine. God knows how many glasses were emptied between them. And at the end of it, the guy carried Grandpa on his shoulder once again in a flying speed and back to his bed.
"See you around,"
he said, and disappeared. When Grandma came back from market, she indeed found Grandpa stinking of alcohol. A year or two later, grandparents were visiting Seoul for the first time in their lives. Their oldest son, my oldest uncle, got a place in the uni in Seoul, and they came up with him to make sure he got a good enough room. But then Grandpa suddenly stopped at one corner of the street. Grandma asked what was wrong, and Grandpa pointed a pub at the corner.
"That's it. That's where I drank with a strange guy."
Grandpa was serious, but Grandma didn't believe it. Seoul was a half a day away from their village, with a poor public transportation connection at the time at least. And she just thought Grandpa didn't recognize things properly due to his high fever. Not long after, broke the Korean War. Many people fled southwards, but grandparents decided to dig a hole underneath the floor and hide there. Not only many of their children were still too young, but their second son, who'd been communist sympathizer, went missing, and Grandma refused to go away in case her missing son come back. Life was on a high alert at all times to keep themselves as quiet as possible. Then one night, they heard somebody from the outside whispering,
"Hello, hello, anybody in?"
Grandma whispered back, "Who is this?"
"Is Mr. Kim there?"
said the stranger. When Grandma opened the door, the man was carrying bags of stuff on his back. He brought them inside and said to Grandpa,
"It was really nice of you to keep my company then, even though you were ill. This is just a little sign of gratitude."
Then he said he was in a hurry and disappeared again. The bags he brought in were rice. The family was a bit stunned by the sudden visit and gift, but they were all hungry due to scarce supply during the war, so they cooked a pot full of rice and ate till they got full. The following day, when Grandma checked back the bag of rice, it was just full of straws only. Apparently, back in those days, it wasn't uncommon to run into Dokkaebi. My dad, who doesn't believe in ghosts or anything paranormal, still believes Dokkaebi alone is real. Well, his family legend is the undisputable proof after all. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this little historic journey of Korea through Dokkaebi stories. The impression I get is Dokkaebi represented a sort of wild, furry spirit that doesn't care the human convention, morality, or politeness. They do what they want and say what they mean. Fair in the sense they pay back a good for good and bad for bad. Stories of Dokkaebi might have been a little let out for people who were constantly expected to behave themselves and keep the social facade. If you enjoyed my work, please give it a comment and a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. I'm hoping to reach my first 1,000 subs finally sometime soon, and each and every sub towards that goal would be greatly appreciated. If you'd support me more directly, I also have a Buy Me a Coffee account. The link's in the description. Buy Me a Coffee supporters enjoy an early access to my new video. Thank you. Next Sunday is already Christmas Eve. Let us make the most of the remaining 2023. Until then, Stay safe and take care.